So there's this image going around, and it is of a grave. And the grave has, like, these iron bars around it. It literally says, "I'd like to know the backstory." And I'm like, ooh, how curious. Like, what the heck's going on here? It's like a cemetery with a, manicured lawn, and then there's this grate of, like, iron bars over the coffin, and the first thought is, oh gosh, like, what, they think there's going to be a zombie outbreak. Like, that was the first thing I saw. I was like, haha, what the heck? Like, I don't know why that was my first thought at all. So I reversed image searched it with TinEye. Thank you, TinEye. Love that site. And the first instance of this particular photo that I found, it took me to an Imgur thread. The first thing that I saw was bodies were stolen and sold for medical research. So rich people did this sort of thing. I'm like, oh yeah, like, okay, stop grave robbers. Sure, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Cool, all right. But, I was like, well, that explains it, I guess, but, like, whose grave is this? Where's the photo from? And then I looked a bit further in the thread, and someone said, the grave isn't available for robbing, and someone else said buried with all her jewelry. So not only were they, saying that people would steal the bodies, they were saying that people would also steal the things that were buried with the body. So someone actually linked to the Wikipedia article on MortSafe, and I was like, that's really interesting. So I'll just summarize the article for you. So it talks about that MortSafes were contraptions that were used a lot in Scotland when people who were resurrectionists wanted to study the body. Apparently, a resurrectionist is a body snatcher employed by anatomists, and this was in the UK. They'd go and they'd rob, grave rob and exhume bodies of people that had recently died so that they could do, medical research on it, I guess. Apparently there weren't many people mustn't have been willing to donate their bodies to science, so people had to turn to grave robbing to, find things out about the human body for medicine. I don't know. Anyway, so these people were robbing graves, and apparently the authorities at the time didn't really care, because they were like, this person is dead. People are trying to further science, so, what, big whoop, basically. So, nobody cared. But obviously the families of the people who were being grave robbed, they cared. So it says that this MortSafe contraption was invented around 1816, and they were usually iron and stone, and they were really heavy usually, so they were often padlocked together, and apparently they're, like, all over Scotland, which is interesting because, well, you'll find out. I'm not really quite sure, do they go in the ground? Like, I don't understand, like, Is the coffin inside the mort safe? I'm not really sure because, you know, there's lots of different things. Is the person like not, I don't understand. I didn't look into that as much because I wasn't that interested in this part of it. I was like, okay, so I know what it is now. It's a mort safe. Cool. Now who's this guy? You know, apparently I don't care enough to actually research this as to if the coffin is inside it, because then it would have to go all typically 6 feet under, and then but then it's on the outside as well. I don't know. I'm very confused. This must also be why there are like vaults, like people were buried in vaults so that, you know, there's no chance of robbery or grave robbery. Yeah, and apparently it's why watchtowers in mortuaries exist, which is kind of interesting. And I was like, okay, well, cool, but this specific grave, what's up with this specific grave? Like, it's just some grass, and why is this one grave special? What is special about this grave? Why did someone take a photo of it? And then I finally went back to the post, and I scrolled down a bit, and people were like, oh, haha, zombies, neck romances, perverts. Okay, that's a gross comment. Someone said, in my town we call these witches' graves. Oh, it's for zombies. Oh, zombies. Oh, necromancers. Oh, perverts. Oh, you know, they were scared of Frankenstein and stuff like that. But then I came across this one section, and it was just this link to a website called oldweirdscotland.com. Anyway, that website sort of like it finally like started, you know, putting the pieces together of this whole thing. So this one, and it had another photo. There was another photo of the same grave, which I wasn't sure that it was the same grave at that point because it didn't actually have those bars over it at that point in this photo. And I believe it's the same grave. So this blog post is titled Cursed Stones of the Dune. I believe it's said Dune. I can't speak Celtic. I am sorry. I try. I actually really, really enjoy Celtic languages, but I suck at them. So just reading this post, my brain was like, oh, Outlander.
Something happened to me.
Which is probably kind of, oops, you know, gosh, all this person knows about Scotland is Outlander.
Let's try not to get flogged or stabbed today.
No promises, Sassenach.
But beside that, so 5 cursed stones protect the grave of Seath Moore. I actually found the pronunciation for his last name, but you know, I'm not even going to try it. So it's Seath Moore, I believe. Sorry, not Seath, Seth Moore. In the Dune of Rothimercus, maybe? So, the 5 cursed stones. If you've seen Outlander, Craig Nadoon, yeah, that sparked a thing in my head. I was like, holy crap, what the hell? Okay.
The world just spun out of control.
Claire?
I know it doesn't make any sense, but I seem to have fallen through time.
So apparently they placed these stones on his grave so that anybody that wanted to tinker with his grave was visited by Bodak on Dune, or the spirit of the Dune. And actually, it turns out that a lot of people in the past had actually tried moving those stones or tinkering with the grave or something to that effect, and they ended up dying. They literally ended up dying, or getting very severely ill. So these people were, in 1800, an English footman threw a stone. 4 days later, the stone had returned and the footman was found dead. Drowned. In the 1940s, a journalist lifted the stone above his head and was killed in a car accident that same day. The same day that he lifts some cursed stone above his head, he dies in a car accident. What? Then in 1978, Mr. Leslie Walker touched a stone. He came down with a mystery illness that lasted for 6 weeks, and had a very high fever. One of his friends went and rearranged the stones and died of a cerebral hemorrhage in the same cemetery the next day. And then a third person, who was a friend with both of them, was hospitalized with stomach pain. What? Anyway, because there were all of those incidents and potentially more, wouldn't surprise me, that's when the grate was finally installed over top of the stones. And I guess nature had its way, and then all the grass grew over it. So that's the history of that photo. But then I was like, who's this guy that's been buried with some freaky cursed stones on top of his grave? Like, who does that and why? Like, what is it about this guy? So that just got, I went into a tangent. I went into a tangent about monoliths. I went into a full-on tangent about, oh my goodness, everything is connected to everything. Why is this related to Outlander? Oh my god, like Craignadoon, freaking the clans. I was researching clans for like way too long. I was looking up this one guy and finding out, his family, and then I ended up finding out where the cemetery is, and you can go and stay at the estate. And then, on the same website that it's saying, come stay at our estate, it has stuff about the church and the burial ground, but it doesn't really, from memory, I'll triple check now, didn't really mention that there's a cursed grave site there. And I'm like, why would you not mention that on your website? Why would you not mention that? People can come to your place and see a haunted grave. Isn't that something that people would be all over? Apparently, Monarch of the Glen was filmed at this estate at some point. Like, I don't know if it was set there or what, but Monarch of the Glen, which, I don't know, like, I used to see on TV all the time. I don't know if my family watched it. I think they sometimes did. It was filmed there at some point. Like, what is going on? Who is this guy? What is this estate? What is going on? Why am I interested in this? Why am I fascinated by Scottish history? So this is an excerpt that I found on Tumblr from a blog called Archaic Wonder. So this post says, these dark woods are home to the grave of Seath Moore, a chief of the clan Shaw who lived in the 14th century. He was a formidable warrior standing over 6 feet tall and had a twisted smile that could strike terror into the hearts of even his own people. His spirit is said to appear to those who wander too deep into the forest, challenging them to do battle. Legend has it that if you show fear or run away like a coward, you will never be heard from again. However, if you remain calm and accept the challenge, the ghostly chieftain will leave you in peace. I'm pretty sure this is the only place that I found mentioned this dude's ghost, asking you to fight with him. So, Seth Moore's burial site is close to the Kirk of the Dune of Rothimercus, and 5 cylindrical stones have been placed on top of that grave. So maybe it's not even his grave. I don't know. I'm so confused, but it has his name on it. But I know that that doesn't mean anything because I've watched enough Outlander to know that Jacobites had like 21 names. And that turned into a whole thing because apparently I care about the ancestry of this person who I know exactly nothing about. I know that they're a Scottish person. Half of them had the same name. Anybody who dares tamper with the stones will suffer. Suffer the wrath of the clown's guardian spirit. The Goblin of the Dune. In the early 19th century, a man stole the center stone and threw it into the river. The following morning, the stone was back and the man was floating dead. It's wild. Apparently, Shaw is as renowned in death as he was in life. Many travellers who've gone through here have spoken of this gigantic figure challenging them to a battle. If they accept, they're fine, and if they show fear, they flee and they're never heard of again. Blog posts from people who have been there and say that it's creepy. Someone else said that in the 80s, all 5 stones were removed and dumped off the road bridge into the Spey. A rumour had circulated that the stones were in the river. Someone found the stones in the river, and then they were returned to the grave, and then they put the cage back over. Did the person who removed the stones meet a weird end? Probably. There's speculation that there were originally more stones and they represented the survivors that fought with this guy at the Battle of the Clans outside Perth in 96. Like, one of them survived out of the 30. There's lots of stuff about the family here. And this is saying that Seth Moore was a 14th century chief of Clan Shaw. He was 6 feet tall with a crooked grin that would strike terror into the hearts of his own people. People who've survived the encounter with Seth's spirit have said that if you show fear or run away like a coward, you'll never be heard from again. I'm wondering how we know this. I mean, I know that there would be missing people, so it's really confusing and a little like, it's folklore. So, I mean, I'm not going to say that this didn't happen, but, there's not a lot written about it. I was like, who is this Seth Moore guy? Is he on any of the ancestry sites? A bunch of links came up and they all had weird, I don't know whether I could find him because he had like 20 names. So I could never tell whether I was looking at him or his father or his cousin or his like 29th cousin 50 times removed. And I didn't know what decade I was in. Anything, anywhere. Apparently at the house, it's common knowledge that this dead clan chief is still roaming around. He, again, was an intimidating figure. He was 6 feet tall with a grimace. He's buried in a lonely part of the forest, 20 feet away from the local graveyard. I'm like, it didn't look like it, but, you know, am I like, there were other graves around his grave in that picture. What are y'all talking about? Like, be consistent. I'm confused. You're confusing me. Because then it says that his grave was 20 feet or whatever away from other graves, but then it says that his grave is the one with 5 white stones on it. And then later, all this stuff happened, and, you know, all these curses, and someone throwing the stone into the river, and the person with the brain hemorrhage, and the person getting hit by, like, car accident, and then the stones vanishing and then coming back, and now the grates on it. But in the photos, they look quite close. Like, I wouldn't say that looked 20 feet away from other graves. So where's the consistency? I can't get any. I want to go to this grave just so I can see, and just so someone can actually tell me whether this is actually, like, who this is. If these people are like. And then I found a Flickr post, someone describing the stones as cheese-shaped. And I was like, look, you're not wrong. They do kind of resemble some type of cheese, but that's a really interesting description. Apparently, people now throw coins onto the stones. I don't know if that's good luck or not, like if they're doing it for good luck, but apparently it's not safe to remove the coins, so there's all these coins all over it, and he's got a photo zoomed in of the grave of one of the stones with coins all over it. The church there is the burial place of the Grant family, who owned this estate, as well as some of the Shaws, and apparently the Shaws owned the estate before the Grants. And Seth was one of them, obviously. It speaks of a familiar spirit or a brownie known as the Bodak Odon, the man of the dune. The Bodak allegedly left the dune and came here to guard the shore tombs instead. So when the Grants, you know, took over the estate, the Bodak left the dune and came to the graveyard to guard Shaw's tomb. And then I found this other thing because I spent like 2 hours trying to figure out who this guy was and who he's related to. Go figure. And I came across this post that said that Shaw Moore is also known as Farquhar Shaw, who died in 1405. And according to local tradition, death or ill fortune would befall anyone who removes the cheese-shaped stones. This Mort safe is a comparatively recent addition to prevent the removal of the stones or, you know, tinkering with them, because it's dangerous. And you know, tinkering with them started to become a popular dare amongst teenagers in the area. And, like, I get it. Me as a teenager, probably same. But is this Farquhar Shaw guy and Sean Moore and Shaw Moore, and are they all the same person? I don't know, because that timeline is wrong, I think. Like, I don't know. And then there was this painting of this Farquhar Shaw guy, and it was kind of amazing. And then I came across this painting that is of James Carnegie, and I'm sorry, I've seen it before, but it just makes me laugh. And I couldn't make this video without including it, because I'm sorry, I love his nose. It's beautiful. But can someone please tell me, I deep dived into Ancestry.com. I don't have an account, so I couldn't, like, properly look at things. But this Farquhar Shaw guy was all over it. And then I was looking into all of the clans from that time, and the Black Watch and what was that battle? The battle from, it's in Outlander. The battle. Craig Nadoon battle. Battle of Culloden. The Battle of Culloden. The Battle of Culloden. There was all this stuff about the Battle of Culloden, and I'm like, I know about the Battle of Culloden because I've seen Outlander. I'm an expert. Kidding. I'm sorry. I don't know anything about the Battle of Culloden. And I'm like, and then it was saying that this Lord Farquhar Shaw, he's not a character from Shrek, I'm sorry. This Farquhar Shaw guy was like, I don't know, I'm just remembering, but was like, not a deserter, maybe a deserter or something. And I'm like, from what I was reading, this Sean guy wasn't a deserter. So why are you telling me that it's this Farquhar guy? And this was from someone who'd actually been to the grave, so I'm kind of like, oh, well, you've been to the grave, so you must know. They must have told you. And I know that, like, a lot of stuff from back then is probably very mixed up, and the history, it wasn't all written. They did write a lot, but a lot of it's either lost or perished or whatever. But I just got far too concerned about who this guy was and what happened to his family and where they're living now. And you know, I wanted to know more about why they put these stones there and all this stuff. But essentially, some guy in Scotland who was a Jacobite in I don't know whether he himself, I think he might have fought in the Battle of Culloden. He fought in a bunch of Jacobite, I'm assuming, wars. He died in Perth, which is in Scotland, not the Perth in Australia. He died in Perth. And then they buried him with these cursed stones. And people keep dying. And so they were like, oh, just in case, we're going to cover his grave with something that we usually reserve to cover. We usually reserve for, like, if people are trying to steal stuff or if people are trying to, you know, snatch a body. But, you know, there's these cursed stones, so, you know, just in case we'll guard it. And I'm like, this is wild. This is not what I expected to find out from this picture. This is not what I expected to find in my search for why there was an iron grate over a grave. That was literally, like, that was the last thing on my mind was cursed rocks. And the Battle of Culloden being involved in this. Last thing on my mind. I don't know what I thought when I first saw it. I was like, oh, someone... I knew that it wasn't going to be zombies, but I was like, zombies, haha. So, yeah, if y'all liked this video, or if y'all have been there to this specific grave, and have any excess information to share with me, that would be nice. But if you enjoyed this, I guess leave a like or something. And I will see if I can make more of these. And I might try and do more research next time because this was sort of like very spur of the moment. I kind of got... I found it really hard to concentrate on the content that I was researching because of a lot of it was just words after words after words after words. And apparently my ADHD diagnosis doesn't like that, surprisingly. Who thought that'd be a thing, hey?